Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of hundreds of monster ecology and strategy videos on my channel, including an entire A to Z listing of every single monster in the Monster Manual, Core Monster Manual for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing as I upload at a somewhat inhuman frequency. This is a special Patreon request bonus video, an otherworldly creature that was mentioned in the video on the lore of the Yakfolk. This is the evil avian outsiders called the Marrashi. A Marrashi is about 5 feet tall or 1.52 meters tall with a 10 foot or 3 meter wingspan. They have the head of a jackal with a human body, a male body, the wings and feet of a bird of prey. They are not pretty creatures, they stink and have a speaking voice that is little better than a screeching sound, grating on the nerves. Despite the large talons on their feet, the legs are double jointed and quite agile, which the Marrashi take full advantage of, using their capacity for flight and excellent eyesight to fire arrows from the sky using powerful longbows. Marrashi are an ancient supernatural species from the outer planes, on the smouldering slopes of black sand and dark granite, under a perpetually sullen blood-red sky, in air so dry it can kill a human from severe dehydration in only a matter of days. The infinite plane called the Barrens of Doom and Despair, also known as Banehold, but most commonly called Gehenna. The layers of Kalis, Kamara, Mongoth and Krangath are the home of this evil species, but they can also be found on the second layer of Arcadia, on the plain of Buxinus, in the city of Heliopolis, in service to the evil powers of Melhorandi pantheons. They can be found lurking around the 9 hells of Bartor on the lands of Fate, known as Zakhara on the world of Toril. This species is so ancient they are recorded in the most ancient text in Toril's earliest ruins, where a legend of a great number of them being summoned by gnolls to spread a plague through the population of the avian creator race, the Aeri, some 31,000 years before the present day on Toril is etched into crumbling stone. Legends and lore. Opportunistic and evil, the Marrashis are still lawful by nature and have always been a preferred target of summoning spells cast by the Zakharan Sha'irs, and long before them by the Genies themselves. The secret rituals of summoning these creatures was passed down to the Sha'ir, as is the rest of their elemental wizardry, which they learn through observation, such as the ability of the Sha'ir to summon a tiny elemental familiar called a Gen. Sha'ir are one of the few races on Toril who know the secret of crafting a genie prison, and I'll have to cover that sort of thing in a later video. I'm sure you'll be interested. Another otherworldly race, forever the rivals and bitter enemies of the Marrashi, are the flame-winged humanoids with eagle claws for feet called the Asura, who are of a good alignment and far more attractive, with regal features and marble skin. They dwell in many of the places in the upper planes, serving traditionally as messengers for celestial beings and travelling down to the material plane to lend their aid to the faithful. In the celestial realms, they are chaotic good, but live in a master and mentor-based society where they dutifully obey every order given to them by a more experienced commander, but switch allegiance to another commander anytime the situation calls for a different set of skills and experiences, which seems a little odd compared to the traditional hierarchies of the Celestials, but perfectly reflects their wholesome respect for individual freedom. They believe personifying the principles of goodness, kindness, tenderness, and light is the way that they treat others and their actions that they take, so they personify these principles through their actions. Unlike the Marrashi, who slumber away the night on worlds that have such a thing, Gehenna doesn't, the Asuras never need to sleep, and as far as I know, neither species die of old age, and the Asuras can subsist simply on positive energy. A quiet moment in blissful prayer with a cleric, a paladin, or a divine sorcerer where they lay hands on this otherworldly being is enough to fully sustain their otherworldly biological needs, while the Marrashi greatly enjoys a loathsome diet of carrion. They don't mind cheese and grilled meats, they just prefer something like a dead rat that's been out in the sun for a few days, getting nice and ripe. I don't advise standing too close to a Marrashi eating ripe rats, as they tend to pop when they bite into them and you might get maggots in your hair. Both species wear clothing. In the case of the Asuras, it's a loose toga of nice fabric. The Marrashi prefer warm climates, and they wear nothing more than a dirty loincloth usually, but in colder environments they will craft their own studded leather armour, favouring lots of straps and buckles. They take great pride in their archery skills and own as fine a bow as they can find, which, given their many centuries of life and wide travels, can include powerful magical longbows indeed. They fashion wicked arrows, usually barbed and diseased. The Asuras use missile weapons but are much more proficient melee fighters, attacking from the air with consummate martial skill. Their claws capable of tearing open bodies with horrific wounds, hooking into victims as they fly past at great speed, hurling them off their feet and clawing them open in sprays of blood and chunks of shredded flesh. The Asuras are quite powerful, at the same time slicing with blades as they blast right past the front ranks of their foes and slice into the heart of a squad of enemies before leaping back into the sky. Watching Celestials in action like this, knowing that these warriors of light can be healed, even when they take grievous wounds in combat, you can understand that the Celestial forces are fearsome. Thankfully, they don't employ their forces in great numbers unless it is absolutely called for, but when they do, they can be devastating. The celestial power flowing through the Asuras provides them with advantage against all enchantment and used against them, and they are completely protected from all forms of illusion. Much like the Marrashi, the Asuras have exceptional vision. The Asuras retain this when they transform into a humanoid form when they travel incognito in the material plane. The Marrashi can also do this, I imagine, but they've never openly displayed it. They don't care if their appearance frightens other beings. Turning to the pages of the second monster manual for 3.5 edition, we learn about a third of its arrows in a Marrashi's quiver are vectors loaded with assortments of diseases. The rest are normal except for one, which is a magical Taklyf arrow. Any creature hit by the Taklyf arrow contracts a disease similar to the Marrashi variant of filth fever, except that the spirit of the new Marrashi is actually being generated by this disease within the victim's body. This is an interesting way of reproducing. This is the only way that Marrashi can reproduce. When the infected creature dies, the Marrashi spirit devours its soul over the next 1d6 days. Upon completing that process, the newborn Marrashi rises in the victim's reconstituted corpse, which assumes the form of an adult Marrashi. So, there are no such thing as baby Marrashi. Unless a magic user who summons a Marrashi takes steps to get them to swear loyalty for their term of service, they are lawful after all, it is highly likely that the Marrashi will use its Taklyf arrow on the fool who summoned it, in the hopes that killing them and birthing another member of its race will release it from its bondage. The really insidious thing, aside from the whole process really, is that the reproductive disease seems no different from ordinary filth fever to the victim or anyone trying to cure the victim of the disease. Along with their exceptional sight, Marrashi have dark vision out to 60 feet and the ability to identify enemies and track them by their acute sense of smell alone, making perception wisdom checks involving smell with advantage. I created a homebrew listing for the Marrashi on D&D Beyond. I'll put a link down below for you to use in your games. It's not that far off from the original feel of the original listings for the older editions of the game. Feel free to give them some magical item and magical bow properties. Don't bother adjusting the challenge rating up for that. When you compare them to something like a Vrock, they're a bit underpowered actually. The main factor that makes them so formidable is that they're immune to piercing damage. This is a reflection of the lore about them being able to deflect missile attacks, and they suffer no penalty for long-range missile shots, which is quite potent. So they don't have a close-range listing for their bow. They get full hit bonuses all the way out to 600 feet, which makes them damn hard to deal with if they can keep high up in the air and just rain arrows down on their targets. 5th edition is a bit different in how it handles diseases, but I included the Takir arrow and the usual sort of disease effects for the regular bow attacks in there for you as well. I should mention that the Marrashi enjoy spreading disease. It's like a hobby of theirs. They delight in discovering a new way to spread contagions to mortals, and it goes without saying that they're immune to the diseases themselves. A final interesting note, when a Marrashi is born from the corpse of a diseased host, they often retain some of the memories of the original being, having nourished themselves on the spirit of the deceased. These memories play no part in the alignment or general attitude of the evil Marrashi, but they can lead to some interesting behaviour if it's curious about the memories and investigates them further. And that's about it for the Marrashi. Please hit the like button if you've made it this far. Just a short video this week at the start of the week. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts of these videos. And you've got the right to request a video like this on a specific monster if you so wish. Buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride. And as always, thanks for listening. And I'll be back with more for you very soon.